7-Eleven, welcome back. What you're looking at right now is a non-disclosure agreement. That's courtesy of an investigation by Gulf States Newsroom. And they find that more than 120 employees in Governor Jeff Landry's office there in Baton Rouge, they've signed one of them. Critics do say that the NDAs could create a culture of fear and discourage staff from speaking openly about the administration's work. Joining us now to talk all about this is Drew Hawkins from Gulf States Newsroom, senior reporter. He's been reporting on this for some time. His latest reporting finding this morning that the governor himself also signed one of those NDAs, and we'll talk more about that. Also, just everything that you've got going on here, Drew. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Brandon. You're looking sharp in the blazer.
Thank you. Well, I mean, they said Drew Hawkins was coming, and so, with someone as sharp and solid as you're reporting, I just had to look the part, especially with this investigation. We've had you on to talk about it when you first launched, but you've got more information here. It's developed that including the governor himself has signed one, and this one regards Meta.
Yes, so I would say that at this point, NDAs have really become a fixture of the Landry administration. Like you mentioned, back in March, we reported that at least 50 elected officials had signed non-disclosure agreements related to large-scale industrial developments.
It's more than doubled.
That's more than double. Data centers, LNG terminals, steel mills like in Ascension Parish. So this latest report is finding that state employees and the governor have signed agreements with the governor's office. So what's interesting about it, NDAs can be different. They can have different timelines, different things you can't talk about. These NDAs in the governor's office, signed by 121 employees, they last indefinitely, and they are in effect even if you leave the governor's office. And another thing that's interesting about it is who's signing them, right? So you've got top aides, you've got deputy chiefs of staff, the chief of staff, policy directors, all the way down to interns and student workers, which is pretty remarkable.
Which runs the gamut in terms of the level of priority as far as their administrative level is concerned there in the Capitol. Why does an intern have to sign an NDA as opposed to someone who's senior in the administration has to sign one too?
Well, the short answer to that is I would love to know, but the Landry administration has not answered those questions for me. I think what's interesting to point out as well, I mentioned NDAs can be different in what they cover. These NDAs with the governor's office cover anything that you could potentially learn while working at the governor's office. So really anything.
Right, and I wanted to bring that up next. We do actually have one of those NDAs that you were able to get your hands on with your reporting. And that was one of my takeaways as I was reading through these points here, as we do get that on screen. And it's particularly point 4 that says, I agree that I will execute upon request by the governor's office at any time and from time to time additional agreements relating to protection of confidential information. So I'll stop it there because 1, who decides what confidential information is? But 2, to this point, that's a sliding scale. So what is confidential today may be different tomorrow.
No, you're a sharp guy, Brandon. That is something that legal experts that I've worked with to review these also pointed out. What is confidential today may not be confidential tomorrow, but that also means that you're agreeing to sign additional agreements in the future. So if the governor's office comes to you, you've signed this, and they come to you again 5 years, 10 years, or whatever, you've agreed to sign whatever they put before you at that point, according to that language at least, right?
And to be clear here, this might sound wonky, something from Baton Rouge that may not affect me, but it clearly does because we're talking about information that goes on in the state, and whatever that information may be, you may not be privy to it despite your taxpayer dollars paying for the work that's going on.
That's exactly right. So, anyone who signs this, if they do want to talk about something that they, learned while working in the governor's office, which would be, again, anything, they have to get written personal approval from Governor Jeff Landry before they can do that.
We said that you got your hands on one of those NDAs and were able to speak to some of those people. What are they saying about how they feel?
So, again, not much. They're not answering specific questions about it. There was a general statement that talked about how the agreements won't prevent officials from releasing public records, but they're really not answering the questions really explicitly about why this is needed, why it's necessary. And I did talk to former officials, former top aides that worked for Governor John Bel Edwards, the previous governor. They said they've never seen anything like this. They don't know about anybody else signing them. They never signed them. And then, one of them reviewed it and went through it point by point and talked about just how wild this would be to enforce.
So then why the Landry administration? I know that you haven't been able to get a response from them, but if this is so unprecedented, why are we seeing this here in Louisiana?
So because they aren't answering directly, I can only really rely on people who have experience there, like those former officials. And they talked about how in Governor John Bel Edwards' office, at least, they had what they called a culture of trust. So they basically trusted top people to not reveal sensitive information about projects. And it appears that the Landry administration does not have this same circle of trust. So the concern there would be leaks, information getting out to the public, to the press, and this is designed to prevent that.
What do you see happening next year, both in the investigation, Drew, but also as far as these NDAs are going?
Well, as I mentioned, earlier, NDAs are really becoming a fixture of the administration.
Right.
They're being used more and more. When I came on in March, there were 50 officials. Now that's up to 54. So that's both leaders of the two legislative bodies in the state, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. They both signed NDAs. 77% of the entire Louisiana Senate has signed NDAs. And what's interesting about this kind of reporting is the NDAs themselves don't tell us much. They're just legal agreements. So then the work becomes, what is it that they were trying to conceal? What did they not want released? So that's where we come in next. And, we had a glimpse of this in Ascension Parish with the Hyundai steel mill, where the actual total incentive package that the company is being offered is much higher than what the state's reporting, right? Billions of dollars more. So really the work continues to be, well, what is it that they're trying to conceal with each of these NDAs, which have different purposes, different projects behind them. So I'll be very busy going forward.
The paper trail.
Yeah.
We've got about 30 seconds left. I mean, any of your legal experts or people you speak to talked about anybody possibly suing?
That is something that has been floated. What is the constitutionality of these? Are there First Amendment concerns? Because it's preventing you from speaking. I think what's really interesting here, though, is to point out that the governor himself signed an NDA with Meta, a $1 trillion tech company based out of California. And that agreement says that if our governor, the highest elected official in the state, wants to talk about the data center being built in Richland Parish, he has to check with the company first to make sure that's okay.
What do you think that means?
I think that there are details about the project which involve public incentives, public money, land sales, things like that, that they wanted to negotiate before people could find out about it. And then once the projects are announced, as we've seen over and over again with data centers, LNG, steel mills, once those projects are announced, the deals are done. So there's no more room for public input on those projects.
All right, Drew Hawkins, senior reporter from Gulf States Newsroom. Always good to have you in here, sir, because no matter where your opinion stands on this, you do need to know about them, and they're growing, and so those details do matter. We do appreciate you coming in, good sir. Always some great work.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
All right.